certain dynasties called it their capital. Over 1100 years as the heart of the nation. More than 70 emperors are buried here, making it one of the most densely packed imperial tomb sites in the world. This was where it all began for Qing, China's first unified empire. It was also the powerhouse of the mighty Tang Dynasty, one of the greatest in Chinese history. But then, things changed. After the Tang, Chang'an faded. The Song chose Kaifeng, the Yuan, Ming, and Qing moved north to Beijing. China's political center never returned west. So, how did Xi'an, once so powerful, disappear from history's spotlight for over 1,000 years? Welcome to Moat. In this episode, we explore how Xi'an went from the heart of an empire to a forgotten city. From the Song Dynasty onward, China's center of gravity shifted slowly, then decisively to the south. And Xi'an, it drifted into the background, a relic of past glory. For a city that once rivaled ancient Rome in scale and influence, it was a dramatic fall from grace. So, what really happened? The short answer? The economy moved south, but the long answer? That's where things get interesting. The economic shift didn't happen overnight. It was a slow, centuries-long process that involved war, migration, climate change, and some major innovations. It started centuries earlier, with war, chaos, and a whole lot of people moving. Northern China got wrecked. Rebellions, invasions, and non-stop fighting made life up here rough. By 311, a massive wave of elites, scholars, and regular folks packed up and moved south. They didn't just bring luggage. They brought culture, money, and new ideas. Suddenly, the south, once seen as the empire's backyard, started booming. The Tang Dynasty kept the north politically dominant, but even it couldn't reverse the trend. By the time we reach the Song Dynasty, the transformation is clear. By 1080, over 60% of households lived in southern China. Cities like Hangzhou were exploding with trade: silk, ceramics, paper. Meanwhile, the old Silk Road through Xi'an, falling apart. Too dangerous, too remote. Instead, coastal trade took over. Ships from places like Quanzhou and Guangzhou were now carrying China's goods to the world. By the Southern Song, booming maritime trade was bringing in nearly 1/5 of all government revenue. By contrast, back in the Tang Dynasty, trade taxes were just a drop in the bucket, less than 5%. That's right, the sea, not the desert, was the new superhighway. And Xi'an, too far inland to keep up. But wait, there's more. The land itself was changing. The fertile Guangzhou Plain, once called the land of endless grain, was wearing out. Centuries of farming and logging led to soil erosion. Water ran low, rivers dried up. By the Song Dynasty, even getting water in Xi'an was a struggle. And just as the land dried out, new enemies rose up, not from the west but from the northeast. The Khitans, the Jurchens, the Mongols, all threats that made northern cities like Beijing way more strategic. So while Xi'an faded, Beijing rose, closer to the danger, easier to defend. That's why the Yuan, Ming, and Qing dynasties all ruled from the north. So yeah, Xi'an didn't just lose its capital status overnight. its decline was long, layered, and relentless. It was the environment. It was trade. It was water, war, geography, politics. A thousand-year cocktail of change that pushed the empire's heart farther and farther away. After that, Xi'an kind of faded from the spotlight. Few people paid attention to it, and it was easy to forget. But here's the thing. It's exactly during those quiet, overlooked years that the pieces slowly came together, shaping the city we see today. Let's rewind the clock to the year 904. The Tang Dynasty is on its last legs. Rebellions rage across the realm. Warlords carve up the empire, and the once glorious capital, Chang'an, is staring down its darkest hour. Enter Yuan, the ruthless military strongman who would later found the later Liang. He forces the emperor to abandon Chang'an and relocate the court to Luoyang. And then, he plundered the city. Not just in passing, the palaces, halls, and courtyards of the imperial heart were systematically looted, burned, or dismantled. The political and ceremonial center of the empire collapsed. Chang'an, once the largest, most cosmopolitan city in the world, quickly lost its former glory. At its peak, it had housed over 1 million people. By the end of the Tang, the population had dropped dramatically, likely to a fraction of its former size, and much of the city's grand architecture fell into ruin. Rebuilding, too costly and difficult, slowly, painfully, Chang'an, the jewel of the empire, faded from its central role, leaving behind only memories and the foundations of what had once been a thriving metropolis. Fast forward to the Song Dynasty. The former Tang capital is no longer a capital at all, just a town inside a region called Jingzhaofu. There were efforts to restore it, but let's be honest, it was a shadow of its former self. The size of the city, just 1/10 of Tang-era Chang'an. Remember, Tang Chang'an had these 3 huge rings: the outer city, the imperial city, and the palace city, all surrounded by 12 grand gates. By the Song era, the outer city was completely abandoned. They kept only the old imperial core of Tang Chang'an and walled it off with just 5 gates. At the same time, they also built a defensive moat. But the grandeur, long gone. Even the legendary Ming Palace, once home to emperors, was turned into farmland. All that remained was scattered rammed earth foundations slowly crumbling into dust. The past was being buried not by time but by necessity. The ruins were scavenged. Bricks from palace walls were carted away to build homes, shops, even temples. The emperor's residence became a residential neighborhood, imperial luxury recycled into everyday life. The city's layout changed as well. Gone was the town system of walled wards. The farm, along with the nightly curfews. In Song Xi'an, streets buzzed with free-flowing trade. Shops and homes blended together. Less imperial, more alive, bustling, chaotic, and real. Housing shifted too. Gone were the massive courtyards and towering palaces. Now it was smaller homes, simple woodwork, and low ceilings. Chang'an had shed its royal robes and slipped into something way more practical. Less grandeur, more survival. Song-era Xi'an, or Jingzhaofu, was like a history book with half its pages torn out. Xi'an had suddenly lost the spotlight, but not its soul. Its story wasn't over yet. With its strategic location, the city would soon take on a new role, the key gateway of China's northwest. Let's rewind to the Yuan dynasty, from 1271 to 1368. By then, the city we know as Xi'an was first known as Anxilu early in the Yuan dynasty, and later it became Fengyuanlu. It still followed the basic city layout from the Song and Jing days, but things had changed big time. This wasn't the buzzing cultural capital it once was. Nope, this city had turned into a military fortress all about defense, strategy, and control. In 1272, Kublai Khan gave it a new name, Anxilu, which means pacifying the West. Xi'an was now a key piece in the Mongols' plan to keep the wild northwest in check. They reused old city walls from the Song-era smart move, saved time and money. But when rebellion started flaring up and the Yuan Empire began to crumble, things got tense. The city closed some gates, cutting down to just 4 entrances. The city that once welcomed traders and travelers was now shutting its doors tight. In 1357, the Red Turban Army broke through Tongguan Pass, burning and looting outside the city. By the end of the dynasty, Fengyuan's population had dropped significantly, and the streets grew quiet again. In 1368, Zhu Yuanzhang declared himself emperor in Nanjing, founding the Ming Dynasty. The city, then known as Yingtian Prefecture, became the new imperial capital. But as he set out to reunify a fractured land, a deeper question began to trouble him. Where should the heart of a lasting empire truly lie? That same year, the old Fengyuanlu was officially renamed Xi'an Prefecture, marking the first time the name Xi'an entered government records. Zhu Yuanzhang took notice. After all, this was no ordinary city. Chang'an, as it was once known, had served as the capital of both the Han and the Tang, two of China's most glorious dynasties. For a ruler obsessed with reviving the ancient order, what better symbol could there be? Geographically, Xi'an had its allure: a central location, commanding access to Sichuan, the Central Plain, and the Northwest, and natural mountain defenses long praised by strategists. Since ancient times, it was hailed as a golden city in a land of abundance. So, in 1391, the emperor dispatched his heir, Crown Prince Zhu Biao, on a mission: inspect the ancient capitals, Chang'an, Luoyang, and see if one was worthy of resurrection. Months later, Zhu Biao returned with detailed maps of Guanzhong and high praise for Xi'an. Zhu Yuanzhang was moved. He declared, "If we make Chang'an our capital, we can grow grain, raise troops, and command the north, south, and west. Would that not ensure the dynasty's eternal strength?" Plans were stirring. A revival of the Tang legacy seemed possible. But fate had other plans. In 1392, just a year later, Zhu Biao died suddenly. The heir was gone. And with him, so too went the dream of a new capital in Xi'an. Grief-stricken, the aging emperor sighed. "I wish to move the capital, but now I'm old. The land still heals from war. I cannot burden the people further." The capital stayed in Nanjing. The move was never made. After Zhu Yuanzhang's death in 1398, it was his fourth son Zhu Di, later the Yongle Emperor, who made the bold move. In 1421, Yongle shifted the capital to Beijing, formalizing a dual capital system, Beijing in the north, Nanjing in the south. Xi'an, it was no longer in the conversation. The truth was, by the late 14th century, Xi'an's glory was largely symbolic. Centuries of warfare had taken a toll. Its economy had fallen behind the booming southeast. Infrastructure was outdated, and supply lines from Sichuan or the Central Plain would have been a logistical nightmare if war broke out. By contrast, Nanjing was prosperous, accessible, and far better connected to the financial heartland of Jiangnan. Zhu Yuanzhang, ever the pragmatist beneath his idealism, made peace with reality. Instead of forcing a decision, he left a quiet directive in his will. Let future generations choose their capital not for glory, but for the good of the people and the needs of the time. Even though it never became the capital, back in 1370, Zhu Yuanzhang had sent his second son, Zhu Shang, as the Prince of Qing to rule Xi'an. Starting around 1375, early in the Ming era, the city walls got a major upgrade. They expanded by nearly a third, becoming taller and stronger, lined with 98 watchtowers, gate barbicans, and surrounded by a wide, deep moat. These imposing walls are basically what you see standing today, symbols of strength and defense. Inside the city, everything was carefully planned. 4 massive avenues cutting through the city. The Prince of Qing's mansion stood proud. Confucian temples reflected order and tradition. Military command centers ensured control and security. The drum tower went up first, and then the bell tower, which was originally on the west side of the city. About 200 years later, the bell tower was moved to the center of the crossroads, forming the urban layout we see today. By the late Ming, it had become something new. A fortress, not a cosmopolis. Built not for grandeur, but for survival. Now here's the lucky part. When the Ming Dynasty finally fell, history showed a rare moment of mercy. In 1643, rebel leader Li Zicheng stormed into Xi'an. You'd expect the city's ancient landmarks to be lost in the flames of rebellion, but miraculously they survived. Both the bell tower and its partner, the drum tower, made it through untouched, and they still stand tall today. Its base covers 1,377 square meters. That's even larger than the famous bell tower in Beijing. And yes, it's taller too. So here's the crown. Xi'an's bell tower is the largest, most intact, and most magnificent of its kind in all of ancient China. But that's not all. The Ming-era city wall, rebuilt and expanded centuries earlier, still wraps around the heart of Xi'an, a full 13.74 kilometers long. That's just 1/9 the size of the Tang Dynasty's ancient walls. But here's the twist. It's one of the biggest and best preserved ancient city walls left in China. Sure, there are others, but none come close to its size and impressive defenses. And today, it's even on UNESCO's tentative list for World Heritage status. When Li Zicheng took the city, he did more than just occupy it. He renamed it Western Capital Xijing and founded a new regime, the Great Shuan. For a moment, Xi'an became a capital again, a new beginning, a fresh chapter. But it didn't last. Just 2 years later, Qing forces crushed the rebellion. Li's empire vanished, and with it, Xi'an's brief return to center stage. What was once the heartbeat of dynasties became a footnote in the grand epic of China's history, a flash of glory gone before the ink could dry. When we hit the Qing dynasty, Xi'an didn't really get bigger. No flashy expansions or grand new palaces this time. Instead, the Qing rulers focused on keeping what was already there strong and standing. Think of it as maintenance mode for the ancient city walls, making sure they held up through the years. A lot of what you see standing today dates back to this revival. Inside the walls, things got interesting in a different way. The old Ming-era palace grounds became the Manchu city, a military zone housing elite troops, guarded tight and off-limits to most locals. Meanwhile, not far away, the Hui Muslim community was thriving. Around Huajue Lane, the 7 mosques and the 13 neighborhoods blossomed into a lively, spiritual heart for Xi'an's Hui people. The Great Mosque grew bigger and stronger during Qianlong's reign, becoming a true hub for faith and culture. At the same time, Tibetan Buddhism was flourishing, enjoying strong support from the Qing imperial family. It was in this context that Guangren Temple was built, and it still stands today as the only Gelugpa Yellow Hat Tibetan Buddhist temple in Shanxi province. After the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912 and the founding of the Republic of China, one thing stayed the same: the name Xi'an, which had been given back in the Ming dynasty, continued to be used. This ancient city remained a key hub in northwest China, carrying forward its incredible legacy built over thousands of years. Fast forward to 1949, when the People's Republic of China made Beijing the new capital. From that point on, Xi'an's role as a national capital became a thing of the past, a chapter sealed in the scrolls of history. But Xi'an losing its capital status was some random twist of fate. It was part of a much bigger shift, from a land-based empire to a more ocean-facing one. China was moving from a closed-off, inland model centered on Guanzhong to an open, coastal, globally oriented identity. This wasn't just politics. It was geography, economics, military strategy, and historical timing all working together. History, after all, tends to follow the needs of the era. So, if there's one thing people often feel a little regretful about when it comes to Xi'an, it's not what the city lost, it's the past that got buried. Because much of Xi'an's most glorious past has vanished underground. From the Neolithic Banpo village, to the western Zhou capitals of Feng and Hao, to the Qing dynasty's Xianyang Palace, to the Grand Han Dynasty Chang'an, and then the dazzling Tang-era Daming Palace and Xinqing Palace. All of it mostly gone, lost in dust, ruin, or time. Forgotten treasures hidden beneath modern streets. But here's the good news. Xi'an still holds a stunning amount of visible history. The Terracotta Army from the Qing dynasty, the giant Wild Goose Pagoda, small Wild Goose Pagoda, and Tang-era temples. Historic neighborhoods like Beilin, Beiyuanmen, and Sanxuejie that trace their roots back to the Tang Dynasty. A treasure trove of Yuan dynasty relics in the Beilin Museum, and then the Ming and Qing legacies. The mighty city wall, the bell tower, the drum tower, and don't forget the street names packed with nostalgia for generations of locals. 洒金桥、探视街、冰窖巷、粉巷 or the now bustling neighborhoods like Xiaozhai and 罗马市, once just modest market lanes. See, Xi'an isn't just a city, it's a living archive. It's the birthplace of China's four foundational cultural systems: Zhou ritual, Qing legalism, Han Confucian orthodoxy, and Tang cosmopolitanism. So really, Xi'an's greatest challenge isn't about loss of history. It's about making that history visible and telling its stories again. Because history hasn't been silent, it's just been waiting for someone to speak.